You don't want sleazy prosecutors in this case bringing charges in front of a heavy Democrat grand jury, which they control, and then shooting it down to a judge somewhere else in the country. Could be California, could be New York, could be Kansas, could be Idaho, could be wherever, to then try the case. It doesn't work that way. I want to get to this Alex Wagner on MSNBC, because on my Fox show, I had Jim Trusty. Jim Trusty is a brilliant lawyer. He's been a federal prosecutor. He's been a Department of Justice prosecutor. He's in private practice right now. He was one of Donald Trump's lawyers, and I think one of the biggest mistakes Trump and his team made was to lose that guy. They should have done everything to keep him. I talked to a lot of lawyers, often on TV, often on radio, and he's among the most impressive to me. And so on my Fox show a couple of weekends ago, we talk about this venue issue. The funny thing is, I raised it. And we talk about a number of motions that can be brought. And the judge, Judge Cannon, who I've come to respect, in Florida, she asks in the last hearing with the government there, with the special counsel, you need to explain why you're sending indictments down here to my court from a grand jury in Washington, D.C. You're shooting indictments down to me. You know, this never happens. The fact is, I've told you before, the official United States Department of Justice manual for federal prosecutors in the handling of grand juries, there's a section that says venue limitations. And that section is one sentence long, and essentially it says is, you impanel grand juries or used already impaneled grand juries in the district where the events you're investigating occurred, or certainly most of them. Mar-a-Lago is not in Washington, D.C. This isn't a debate over classified information in terms of whether the president has the power or not. They're making a case based on the fact that he had the documents, he wouldn't give the documents, that he covered it up, that he lied about it, there were classified documents, all in Mar-a-Lago. It's where the SWAT team went, it's where the search warrant was about, all of it. So why are you dealing with a grand jury in Washington, D.C.? The answer is they're Democrats. And they can indict whomever they want for whatever they want. Not so in parts of Florida. So this venue shopping is prohibited in the official manual of the United States Department of Justice. I didn't write it, it's the manual. So I pointed this out, Jim Trusty commented on it. The judge the next day, because she has a hearing in front of her, puts this in her order, and now the conspiracy theories start. Well, she wasn't even asked about this. She doesn't have to be asked about this. She's a judge, and she sees indictments coming down from Washington, D.C., 1,200 miles away from her courtroom. She's probably never seen that before. I know I've never seen that before. And she's saying to herself, what the hell's going on here? They're grand jury shopping, and I have to try the case here. And so she asks, explain yourself. What are you doing? Now listen to how they discuss this. Go.
If you were watching Fox News on Sunday night, you may have heard Donald Trump's former attorney, a man named Jim Trusty. You may have heard him offer up a novel theory about the classified documents case against the former president.
There's a lot of shenanigans in terms of grand jury usage. You know, you don't do a grand jury investigation for a year only to move it to another district unless there's more to the story. There'll be litigation, I assume, that relates to these issues of how the grand jury was used or abused. But it's certainly, again, new territory when DOJ shifts an investigation at the last minute to an entirely different venue.
Okay, so that's Mr. Trusty floating the idea that the special counsel's use of a D.C.-based grand jury, the one that has heard this case for months, that is somehow suspicious.
See, floating the idea. Notice MSNBC is so crooked and corrupt that they didn't even cite the relevant section of the official DOJ manual, which is only one sentence in length. And I believe I even mentioned it on the program. They didn't. So it's a novel idea. It's not an idea. It's in black and white. It's Department of Justice official policy. And she says they've been investigating for months. Exactly. They should never have been investigating that in Washington, D.C. Ever. Go.
and that somehow prosecutors abused the use of this grand jury, and that
she a complete ditz or what? Look at the drama. And somehow prosecutors abuse this policy and so forth. So that's the theory. She's not the only one on MSLSD to do this. So they have a whole argument here. Go ahead.
that abuse should be litigated before a judge. Now, enter Aileen Cannon, the U.S. District Judge.
So now they're going to trash this woman, put her photo up there, and they've been trying to attack her intelligence. She's very smart. She's got a great pedigree, academic record, past experience in the law. But they bring these hacks on who are Democrats, these Democrat hosts, who are now smearing her. Smearing her. They fear that she will not fall in line. She will not follow Judge Chutkan in Washington, D.C., who is a complete hack, who's handling the Trump case there. She's a never-Trumper. She's worse than the prosecutors. She's given harsher sentence than prosecutors asked for. And a few years back, as the AP reported, when one of the defendants said, you know, January 6th, it's the same as what occurred in 2020, she lectured him and said, January 6th is nothing like 2020. January 6th is much worse. Insurrection, blah, blah, blah. Like she's an editorial writer for the New York Times. So these judges are out of control. These are Obama judges. Obama judges. Go.
Overseeing that classified documents case down in Florida. The day after Mr. Trusty laid out that argument on Fox News, Judge Cannon issued this ruling with no prompting from Trump's defense team.
Stop. With no prompting from Trump's defense team. What did I say? A judge isn't just a servant of the lawyers who show up in her courtroom. The judge is the courtroom. The judge owns the courtroom. She represents the judicial branch of the United States government in that courtroom. She's trying a case. Indictments are sent south from the north. Indictments are sent from a D.C. grand jury to a grand jury in Florida. She has to sort it out. She knows the policy at the Department of Justice. We all know the policy of the Department of Justice. You're not allowed to venue shop. You're not allowed to venue shop for grand juries, for juries, for judges. That's the rule. Why? Because you don't want sleazy prosecutors in this case bringing charges in front of a heavy Democrat grand jury, which they control, and then shooting it down to a judge somewhere else in the country. Could be California, could be New York, could be Kansas, could be Idaho, could be wherever, to then try the case. It doesn't work that way. It certainly is an abuse of process, it's an abuse of power, and it undermines the due process rights of the defendant. So she doesn't have to wait for any motion. She's the one receiving the indictment. She sees it. Go ahead.
Judge Cannon pointed to the prosecutor's use of an out-of-district grand jury, the one in Washington, D.C., to continue to investigate and or seek post-indictment hearings. And she deemed the use of that grand jury suspicious. Judge Cannon questioned the legal propriety of that move, and she ordered special counsel prosecutors to explain themselves by August 22nd so the issue may be litigated.
How dare they? That is, how dare she ask them to explain themselves? Doesn't she know what that rubber stamp in her top desk drawer is for? Oh, it's Trump? Oh, the prosecution says what? Next case. No, it's like the Wilmington judge. She's not in that circle of judges in Washington, D.C. She's not in that swamp, and she says, wait a minute. Normally, I'm supposed to rubber stamp these things. But that's not what you did here. You slipped language into this thing. You're giving Hunter Biden immunity from everything. Meanwhile, you say there's an ongoing investigation. I smell a rat. And she did. Garland in the Department of Justice. So it fell apart. Garland circles back to fix the situation. So what does he do? He appoints the same U.S. attorney who he has in his back pocket as special counsel in violation of the special counsel appointment regulation. You're supposed to pick somebody outside the government. You see what's taking place here, America? A grand jury indictment that is online, yet they pool before the grand jurors even vote. collusion going on among and between the prosecutors, the attack on the judge in South Florida who asked a very rational question, given that indictments are flying into her courtroom from Washington, D.C., and of course you have the propaganda media, the state media. Go ahead.
Now, either there is a really unusual psychic connection between the...
All right, that's enough. I can't deal with stupid this long. I mean, a psychic connection or... And by the way, she has no ratings. Here's the problem with MSNBC and CNN. They have no ratings, except in the White House and Capitol Hill and of the other media. Honestly, their business model is an ideological model. They don't care if they have no ratings, as long as they're heard by Democrats on Capitol Hill, by the Biden White House, by the bureaucracy that's pro-Democrat in the Department of Justice, by the DAs in the Democrat cities. That's their audience. Their audience is in America.
Want to see more Mark Levin? Go to levintv.com and subscribe now.